All right, let's go ahead and get going. So if you just rolled in, this once again is a visual representation of our engineering commitment. So those orbs represent different projects, and then you can sort of see our engineers' heads floating around and accomplishing different tasks. So this is a snippet of everything. And you actually can see the timestamp at the top of everything we accomplished in 2022 engineering-wise. So this is our product year in review. Thank you for coming. My name is Stephen Archer. I'm the brand marketer here at TestFit, and I will be your moderator today. We have accomplished a lot in 2022, and we are really excited to share our progress with you. Whether you are a customer or a fan of TestFit or newly familiar with TestFit, we hope that through this webinar, you'll learn something new about our product that will help you determine whether TestFit is right for you, or if you're already using the product, how to use it better. So this is our agenda for today. After this slide, we'll go into introductions. We have two presenters today, Nat McDonald and Matt Kendall. After those intros, we'll go into what is TestFit, couple slides on that, a basic overview, and then we'll get into our product review. So the product review is going to be split into three segments. We have universal improvements, which are improvements that pertain to all of our configurators or our app as a whole. And then we'll go into housing and finish up with industrial. After we finish that product review, we will go into what's next, and we will share all that we can about what we're currently working on and what you can expect to see roll out in Q1 of 2023. And then at the end, we'll have a live Q&A and we'll answer as many questions as we can. I'll have a little more on that in a second. So let's go ahead and get into our introductions. Nat, you want to introduce yourself?
Muted.
Muted, of course. I am a product manager at TestFit. I've been in the industry for 8 or so years. And at TestFit, I'm basically talking with customers, getting feedback and making sure that's implemented into the software.
Matt?
How you doing? I'm Matt Kendall, a lead product expert here. I have about 5 years of design experience in the architecture world before joining TestFit. And then kind of support people with training and also try to kind of tie things back into the product as like a feedback loop.
Cool. Thank you, guys. All right, so what is TestFit? TestFit is a real estate feasibility software. We have real-time insights into design, constructability, and cost. So everything that you're seeing in the GIF on the right is updating in real time. There's no camera tricks or sleight of hand. All the unit mix and the financials do update instantaneously. And basically what TestFit does is it takes your feasibility studies from weeks to hours. And what we like to say is we reduce risk and we increase potential for your deal, your design, your site, etc. So this is a deeper dive into the product. On the left, you have our integrated workflows. So you get spatial test fitting, real-time financials and deal costing. It helps you with site selection, provides quantity takeoff. And then on your right, you're seeing what typologies we support. In the middle, you're seeing the same site cycle through those different typologies. And again, you're seeing those financials update in real time. So same site, different typologies, different financials. So a couple notes before we get into the demo. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. The chat is disabled, so you will have to use the Q&A function. Again, we will get to those at the end and we'll answer as many as we can. And then the other thing is this webinar is being recorded, and after we conclude, we will send a follow-up email with that link so you can rewatch it or share with anybody that was not able to make it today. All right, let's go ahead and get into the demo. Matt, do you want to take over?
And while Matt is opening that up, I'll kind of talk us through what we're going to go through. So we have universal improvements. So that's things that apply across all configurators throughout the app. Housing, so that's kind of our bread and butter is multifamily. We added subdivision in there as well. and also industrial, which we added last year, but have been making improvements this year. So Kendall, you want to start off with how many sites we can now add?
Yeah, so one of the bigger improvements for overall kind of site plans is we've increased the number of sites. Previously, we were limited to 8. And not, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we can go up to 32 sites now.
Yep.
So if you're working on these kind of larger developments, you can continue to either add context to buildings around here or develop a kind of larger area if you needed.
Yeah, and an important part of that also is once you create these sites, you can also slice them up to kind of break them up even more.
Yeah, so let's say this site over here, if we wanted to add like another component to this one, a different style of building, what we can do is we can take this tool, we can slice out this kind of section over here. So you can see we've gone in and kind of made that change. In this inner area, if I wanted to, I could put like a mixed use or like a restaurant or something inside of this area. If we take a look over here in 3D, you can see we've kind of like added something inside of that void over there. So the slice tool lets you kind of go in and create different segments of different segments of a lot. So you can kind of break down a bigger piece into smaller parts of like an overall project.
Yeah, and on top of that, for all these sites, we can also do a topo underlay. So now we have satellite, street, and topo as options for an underlay. And as you can see, Kendall's, you can adjust the elevation change of that, so you can get it to show as detailed as you need. Also, if you hover over them, you can also see different contour lines. If we go within one of these sites to a parking garage, we can also see the multi-size parking stalls that we created. So if Kendall clicks into that, we can see how these are created. Basically, we're allowing you to place any custom sized parking stall within a solver. Right now, this is in high density. We will also be putting it into surface parking as well as industrial at some point. But what you can do is basically set those dimensions, change colors. We also have an ADA table, so you can open up the ADA table, make sure you're hitting the correct percentages of ADA car stalls or van stalls right in there. We also have shared buffers. And if you want to group them around cores, that's that last column there, where it will automatically snap to cores to make it for like ADA stalls.
Yeah, the other thing for these though is we've also allowed like the ability to drag and move these if needed. So it will kind of place it by default in certain areas, but you do have options to kind of move these around. And then on top of kind of, just having the ability to have multiple parkings, you could then start to set some of these as EV if you needed to. Now you're kind of starting to place EV stalls where you want, and you can start adding those supporting rooms if needed for that one. So it does just give you an option to change it to any style of parking. As you can just kind of set a name for it and set that dimension as well. So it can apply outside of kind of a high density or multifamily piece. We're looking at like trailer parking stalls once we get into industrial and whatnot.
Yeah, you can also split those groups up. You can also send them to different levels. So since this is in a garage,
right,
you can move it up to a level above or below anything that you want. Along with other transportation items, we have the ability to change road types. So you can create any road type that you want within TestFit, and now within the canvas, you can just right click and change that to any type that you have.
Yeah, so previously we had to remove this element itself, but now if we right click on a road, it's going to change this whole segment. So I can click on change type and I can select one of my sections that I have over here. So you can see I switched this one to avenue and it's updated the property lines around that road. So it just gives you options to kind of go in and change what we're looking at for that road type. So if we wanted to add parking in different areas or change up a specific road section, we now have that option to leave the existing road network that we've created and then modify it to a different street section.
Awesome. So that's a lot of the in-app universal improvements we've done. We've also done a lot of things outside of the app that pertain to everything that you create with it. Back in March, we created our Revit add-in. This allows you to basically take any data from TestFit geometry and bring it into Revit as its own families, its own elements. You can get so detailed as to what type of firewall or what family you want your firewall geometry to be, and brings it in 10 or so seconds with under 10 clicks or so. We've also improved our login system, which makes it more secure, easier for you. And with that, eventually we'll allow single sign-on. So the ability to use your company's login system if you're in a large company that has that. We won't go through all the list of kind of the stability improvements because we tackle dozens of these per release. But you'll notice that TestFit is snappier, quicker, less likely to crash. And there's just so many of those that we can't really go over that in 30 or 40 minutes.
This one definitely shows it off, though. You can see us just kind of adjusting these roads with these much more complex and larger sites, and we're still kind of running smooth and not really getting into an issue with it.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's check out the Q&A real quick before we go on to the next session. Where does the topo data come from and how accurate is it? So this comes from one of our data providers, Mapbox. They provide all topo data within the US, I believe. The accuracy of it, it will not replace a civil engineer's survey. However, it will give you a good idea of, hey, there's a pretty big hill here, there's a cliff here. Let's, make sure we adjust the TestFit for that. Let's see. We answered, does this program interface with Revit? Yep, we had that. Add in. Can a parking stall be calculated as a percentage of the total number of stalls? For example, are we permitted to have 20% of all stalls as a small car stall? Yeah, so Kendall, if you want to zoom in on that garage, you can basically select a stall.
I'm doing it for the compacts.
Okay, yeah.
So here's where we're changing that ratio. So this is once we start to increase this one, it's going to add more of those stall counts until we get to that number that we want. So now we should be parking 20% of that stall count.
Is everyone else able to see his screen updating? I don't see it updated.
Oh,
there we go. That's better. Okay.
Now we're good.
Yeah, sorry, do you mind showing that again?
Yeah, definitely. So here's the kind of compact area that we've made. Increasing this percentage increases the overall parking that we have. So if we wanted 20% compacts, we can kind of type in that number and you see it's kind of filled up that space.
Cool. Let me see if there's any other questions that we can do right now. Some of these we can answer at the end, I think. Cool. Let's move on to housing. Like I said, our housing configurators have been around the longest. We do the entire density spectrum of housing, from the highest density towers, wraps, podium builds, anything like that, all the way down to townhomes. And then this year we added our subdivision configurator, which basically allows single family neighborhood designs. So Kendall right now is basically placing parcels within 125 acres. You're hitting a mix in the bottom left there. You can see parcel 1, 2, and 3. You see the total there. He placed the pond there, which is automatically sized as a percentage. If you see on the left side, yep, right there. And you can resize that, and that will always be hitting that percentage. You can also see the parking lot that's being placed, like a clubhouse type area also that you can have as a placeholder, anything like that. We also allow, if we want to go over to maybe a smaller parcel.
Yeah.
Just so it's a little easier to see. So we also allow footprints to be placed. So the housing footprints that you want placed, you can customize those size along with the size of the parcel. And those will be shown with nice little trees to make it look decent. We also, let's see, Enscape was 1.5 years ago or so, but Enscape also allows you to render this to make it look nice.
And there's a few options for parcels as well. We can set kind of the parcel size if we want to, the length and width of the lot itself, or there's other ways that we can kind of back into the size of the lot by creating, and I'm just going to delete all of them, but this one, I could say that the building that we're placing under here, or the house we're placing under here could be a 40-foot by, let's say, we'll keep it at 60-foot house. And then the rest of this is going to be controlled from the setback. So if I add additional setbacks on here, you're going to see it's kind of changing the size of that lot relative to the footprint that we have.
Nice. So we also have a manual mode for this. So let's say you wanted to remove some roads and maybe change the general layout. You can just do so there and kind of customize it, and then it will resolve on top of that. There we go. We also recently allow single loaded building or parcels. So that bottom row in the middle, the one above that.
Right here.
Yeah, that one. That's basically allowing like a single loaded parcel. All right. I saw some more questions in the chat, some were about costs. So the way we do costs in TestFit are based off of your inputs. So you input land, soft, hard costs, those kind of things. In our subdivision configurator, we also have build to rent or build to sell. And so any of the costs are just based off of your inputs. You can save those so you always have them. If you work in 2 different regions or something, you can save them and always go back to those. So these costs are just our default values. You can change whatever you'd like. Let's go into some high density, Kendall, with and show off kind of our pinned cores and units. So to give some context to it, we will solve a unit mix and hit that unit mix very precisely and arrange the units in order to do that. Customers were saying they want a little more customization on that. So what we allow them to do now is basically pin units or cores to a location. They can pin those. And then we will resolve the building to attempt to still hit that unit mix.
Yeah, so if we're taking these units and these cores and dragging them into a certain location, those cores will now stay where they are, even as we start to update and move the site around. And then there's another option that we have inside of the verticals tab itself, because you can see as I start to drag this away from that dead end, how it's already placed another stair in there. So we've also added the option within the cores themselves to go into kind of full manual mode for this. So then let's say if I wanted to remove this one, because I know I can handle another way, it does let you go in and still kind of remove those, or the way we used to have it as well, you can add a stair back in or an elevator wherever you want that to be placed. So they will stay where they are as we update this model and change mixes and sizes and whatnot.
Yeah, a super impressive feature, given that you can move something and then the other cores are adjusting to make sure you're hitting your IBC or distance requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Do we show maybe pinning the units? So you can also just like,
oh, that's right,
grab a bunch of units, and let's say for some reason you want all the B1s up on the northeast there, or all the C1s, whichever you want. You can drag those over, and those will stay there, even if you adjust the setbacks or something else in the building. So if you change it, it's going to attempt to stay. Oh, I guess we were in
Oh,
manual mode
I'm in
with that.
manual mode. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Drag a couple of these over again. Drag some green ones this time. And you can
There
see
we
they're
go.
kind of staying along that edge, as long as it's within that same area.
Yeah,
There we
yeah.
go.
What? Yeah. Once you if you change the building too much, they may not stay within that massing, but you can it'll show you that.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's see. Let's check some questions real quick. Wow, we have a lot of questions. Thank you guys for the questions. ADA stalls and garden style. So let's go over to the garden style buildings and we'll talk about kind of those improvements. For Tyler that asked this question, we don't have ADA stalls in garden yet, but that is part of our goals for the next year, is to improve our consistency between configurators, which would mean allowing that there. So Kendall, do you want to just kind of talk through the manual mode that we added to garden?
Yeah, so we've added quite a bit to the kind of in-canvas interactions for garden. One, we can kind of drag these around and plan without having to switch to manual mode yet. The other option is within 3D, we've added a lot more flexibility for doing kind of the same. So we can actually move these. Once we hit a setback, it's going to turn red on us. And then we can start to grab different sides of it. You can see it aligns the different faces depending on what face that I grab. And there's also an option to grab these corners and start to rotate them a bit more if we needed to place that in a certain area. Another thing that we've been able to add into Garden as another kind of manual mode piece is Garden now has the option to have each building have its height controlled. So if we needed to increase the height of some of these to achieve a certain density, or if you're working with topo that allows for some of this, you can then go in and kind of adjust these where needed. And you can see you can kind of change the height of them per building as versus like an overall site that we had previously on here.
Nice. And also the building mix that we added.
Yeah, so the next thing that we added is originally it's always been kind of setting the mix of the buildings or setting the mix of the site from the units that you want. Now, if we switch over to our buildings, you can see we have building A, B, C, and D. I could turn off, let's just zero out both of these. Now you can see we're placing 50% of building A and 50% of building B. Oh, let's check on here on the bottom. You can see we're hitting that mix over there. So we've given you another option to either place it by the building style that you want or hit a mix that uses kind of the all available buildings to hit a certain specific mix for you.
Nice. I think I saw a few more questions. Can streets be imported into Revit? Yep, streets come in as model lines in Revit right now. So those can be brought in. There's an industrial question that we'll talk about in the next section. What about Texas wrap products? So the idea with TestFit, Kendall, if you want to bring up, just the presets. The idea with TestFit is that if you select a site, you can basically place any preset on top of that, which is our different building typologies. So if you wanted a kind of Texas wrap or a Texas donut, that's kind of where you would select that. And then as you customize your presets, you could save those as, your Dallas wrap and your Houston wrap, or, whatever you want. And then each one of those tabs above that also are different configurators as well.
And also with the wrap products, you can quickly go in and redefine that garage if needed. So you can see I've replaced that garage over there and it's reconfigured the building. And then sometimes depending on the layout, TestFit will give you a few options for different configurations that it's figured out. So you can kind of see what is achievable on the site.
Nice. Someone was asking about where can TestFit be used. So it can be used anywhere in the world. Some areas are limited due to, it can be used anywhere. Some places may not have topo or parcel definitions, but most places should have satellite image and street. And I lost where that was. Okay. Great. I think we can move on to industrial. So we created industrial about a little over a year ago. And we've been making some improvements on that. mostly around improving your customization of the site layout. So we haven't touched interiors yet, although we are looking at we are working on that. But this is our industrial solver. I think if maybe we can show some manual mode just to kind of show the customization around that.
Sure. Yeah.
So
there,
yeah, go ahead.
oh,
Sorry.
there are some manual mode adjustments that we've made now, so we can go in. We've had the ability to kind of change the building manually if we needed to, so we can pull that side back off of there. Another thing that we've kind of added into here manually. So once inside of manual mode, I can also click and define this road. So if I knew I needed to, and I'm just going to draw something from this side connecting to here. If I needed to connect something over, you can see how now it's placed that road. It's split that parking over here. So we can kind of manually define how we want a road. And if we needed to, this could kind of cut through the site, something like this. And then we can see now that's kind of the entrance into our site, however we want it. We did also add entrances, just so since we're talking about those, so we can go to add site access to the site. And then what we can do is, let me kind of move this guy for us. We can grab this circle, and then you can see as I move that through this site, you're kind of getting that live feedback that you're used to in TestFit of kind of placing that entrance where you want it.
Yeah, and those entrances you can have multiple entrances, and each one can have differing widths and turn radiuses. So if you had car entrances versus truck entrances, you can do that there. Maybe we can talk about parking. Want to switch it to a single loaded building real quick, Kendall?
Yeah, so the new parking improvements that we have right now, you can see we're still trying to hit a parking ratio. But if I were to set all of this to 0, we could kind of select to kind of push parking into specific areas. So the new features down here on the bottom, if I wanted to, I can set my minimum parking bays to specific sides of the building. So let's just say I want to park all of them in the back. I can go ahead and increase the number of parking along that side. You can change it to the edge of the buildings as well. So if you wanted to kind of wrap parking around a space, you can see how we're starting to kind of place the parking where we want. So we've given some more flexibility to kind of put it in different locations, depending on the demand that you need for the site itself.
Yeah, and sorry, keep going, Kendall.
No, I was gonna say with this one, a new piece that we added into TestFit, we have single loaded parking. So you can see if I just allow kind of one load over here, it's actually going to start giving us some single loaded elements. So you can see now we have that kind of shown all the way around the site. So if I wanted to make the backside a full parking, now we can kind of get a little bit more detailed with our hitting our parking mixes, since we have the ability to solve for a single loaded road. So this got a little bit larger. You can see our normal kind of 2-tray road that we've had before. Reducing this down does change that middle one to single loaded to kind of help get closer to some of these numbers and fill up more of the site where possible.
Yeah. And you can also, so let's say you didn't want any on the right side, you could basically bump that maximum down to 0. And then it would then place everything elsewhere. So it gives you as much, the most flexibility you can have around parking in the building. We also updated our freight stall parking so that you either have the option to do it as a ratio of stalls to docks or as a ratio of stalls per 1,000 feet. So you'll, as the building size increases, the number of freight stalls will also increase. I saw one question real quick about do the proposed development concept respond 3-dimensionally to follow topography? So right now we do not solve for topo. There are ways to basically adjust our solves so that you can like have a void in a space or something like that, or add an easement. So if you saw that there was a large hill there, you could put that there, and that easement, it's always going to solve around that easement. Same with wetlands. We don't really solve for wetlands yet, things like that. Want to talk about dynamic dimensions in industrial?
Yeah. Here. Let me put a couple buildings on here just to make sure we can kind of see what it's doing. Put some smaller ones. Cool. So we have a couple of buildings on here now. Now we can start to turn on some dimensions and areas. So we can turn on building widths. There's also names. Now we're seeing building A and B. Once we start getting to multiple options to show square footage of buildings per each, these happen to be two of the exact same sizes. And then some other kind of key metrics, such as, you know, these dimensions of the grid, overall building dimensions. And then because this is kind of a facing inward, we're getting a dimension of both the truck courts and the parking combined between these ones. So just kind of the critical dimensions of the building and the square footages and the on here. The other two that we've added, you can also show the docks per building as well, and the trailer stalls that are associated with that building. So just more kind of information that's just right inside of the canvas versus in our expanded tabs.
Nice. So I think that's most of the stuff that we have in industrial that I can think of. I think the next thing, Steven,
one more thing. Sorry. No, there was one more thing actually we added. We did have the ability to turn off the ring roads where needed. So if we are working on a much smaller site, and I'll just make this a much bigger building just to kind of show that. Single loaded. So if we're working on kind of a larger site and we had access that we didn't need to kind of have these areas going around the side, we can now go and we can turn off these ring roads, and you can see it's pushed the building out even farther on that site. So if, let's say, if you're doing it with the roads tool that I had shown earlier and you're dealing with your circulation that way, or if you're also dealing with the circulation through the parking that you have, we can turn off those ring roads on the sides, and we can just make the assumption that we're going through those to kind of get our building to max out. Where previously with ring roads on, you can see that it's added that ring road plus all the buffers that we have. With that off, you can see it's kind of getting itself a bit, letting the building get a bit larger on that site. Okay, nice. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's all the improvements we have right now. Steven, I think you want to keep going.
Yep. Let's here we go. Y'all see my screen?
Nope.
Nope.
And while he does that, everyone, we're going to have Q&A at the end. So type all your questions into the chat if you have them.
Yeah. So this here is basically a one-page recap of everything they just talked about. Feel free to take a picture of this. It's easiest. Also, we will send you the recording, as we said. On the left, we have our universal improvements. Big thing here is those in-app improvements are basically going to help you to create better sites with more flexibility, and then you'll be able to continue your work out of app with add-ins like Revit. Moving on to housing, the big ticket item here is subdivision. Essentially, what subdivision is going to allow you to do is it'll help you to more easily determine what typology to use on your site, whether it's townhome or single family. It's basically going to give you a lot more options with density for those larger, lower density sites. And then industrial, big thing here is customization. So you have the customization of buildings and roads, which is going to allow you to do things like have larger buildings and continue to or still hit your parking requirements. So that's a quick recap. Nat, do you want to talk to us about what's next?
Absolutely. So some of our big goals for next year are basically allowing better collaboration within companies with TestFit. So basically allowing shared projects so that multiple people can be working on the same thing. Architects can be working, an architect within an office can be working with a real estate developer in an office to make sure that the financials and the, design are actually working together. So we want to collaborate on that. By bringing shared projects into the cloud, we will also be bringing other TestFit assets there too, but that'll be a little later in the year. So we are still working on industrial. We've had a great response from it. And some of these things are spaces inside of industrial buildings. So this is what this GIF is showing, is that you can basically place a space inside of a building based on either a target area or a target percentage of your building area. And as you adjust that, the space not only stays in the same spot of the building, but also increases and decreases in size as you solve it. We're also going to merge parking lots. So you may have noticed in our solve that there was each of the 3 parking lots around a building didn't necessarily connect. We're going to connect those pretty easily. One of our most popular user experience items on the list will be turning off snaps. So in manual mode, right now our snaps are kind of aggressive, to say the least. And we've found a solution to improve that immensely. So hopefully that's just around the corner. Lastly, we want to improve our configurator consistency. So if you've noticed, there are some features in high density and they're not in industrial, or some are in an industrial, like single loaded, but not in high density. We want to make sure that no matter what configurator you're using, you have a consistent feature and user experience in each of those, or all of those. So that's kind of our roadmap for short-term roadmap in the next year. There's going to be a lot of other things. We rely a lot on customer feedback to create these roadmaps. So please speak up. It really helps to hear how you're using the product and how you think we could bring you more value.
Cool. All right. Let's hop into the Q&A. We have a lot of questions, so we will get to as many as possible. All right, starting off, can I get the software for free?
So no, we do a per user annual license. If you would like to talk with some of our sales reps, we can absolutely get you started on a trial and talk about pricing from there.
And the trial is a 3-week period with full access to the software. So there's not going to be any limitations that you wouldn't have in whenever you do have a license.
Okay. Can a multi-parcel project manage different data per parcel? Would like info on how data for the financial analysis portion is input/reviewed?
So I don't totally follow the multi-parcel part. I'm not sure if that's for subdivision or what. Nancy, we can follow up with you on this. And like we said, financial analysis is based off of user input and saving those.
So you would be able to set it per kind of parcel if you wanted to. So if you were looking at kind of a larger development like this, each site could have its own deal information. And then we would see, if we were to select outside of it, we would see an overall development for the entire site, with each of them kind of inputting their own information to this total plan itself. So you can individually, and then you can kind of see it as an overall plan. It's a pretty big project over here.
Yeah, that is a much better answer than mine. Want to keep that up just in case we want to
I'll
talk
keep it
about
just
any
to
of it?
go through some questions for sure.
Yeah. Someone said, can TestFit accommodate some of the new urban street types coming out with cycle tracks, protected bike lanes, bus lanes, etc.? Yes, we can.
Yeah.
We basically, Kendall, you want to show it off?
Yeah, definitely. So what we also have is the ability to go in here inside of our editor. This brings up the kind of default roads that we've drawn or kind of given you already. I can left click to go inside of those and change the section of the road if I wanted to. So right now you can see we have a sidewalk, buffer, a couple lanes, a buffer, and a sidewalk. So we can make these larger. I could remove them if I wanted to. It's going to through both of those. And then I can add features, whatever they may be, if it's parking or if it's additional drives or buffers or sidewalks. We can go in there and then customize those roads, save those as a roads profile. And then you can see on this one, I've only updated one side of it, but now we've added some of that parking along that road that we've already drawn. So you can go in and create your own street sections, save them as like a custom database, and then use those between projects as it's saved overall through TestFit and not site specifically.
Yeah. Let's see, what kind of outputs are exportable? So we export to, let's see, Revit, AutoCAD, SketchUp, PDF, Excel, and am I missing anything?
think that was it.
I think that's
Oh, the
it.
generic 3D file.
Yeah, generic 3D file, GLTF. Yeah. Are there plans in the future to accommodate slope sites? It's something we have the data in there for the elevation. It's definitely a pretty big overhaul of how we do site solves, but it's certainly not out of the question. I don't think that's near term what we're looking at right now, but we certainly would love it as well.
And one thing that we can do to kind of handle topo to a certain degree is you can see right here on this bottom area, I've taken a space and turned it into a void. So if you are working with like a heavily sloped site and you know of it a bit yourself, there's options to go in and remove out spaces. Or if you're looking at a larger site, you can use those easements to draw around really steep areas where you're planning on building around anyway. So there's a couple ways to go about it. But for right now, it would be more of a manual interaction.
Yeah. I think I saw some questions about parking. I don't know if we just want to show a surface parking lot in massing mode and maybe show off massing mode a bit. We haven't shown that off too much.
Yeah.
But a lot of our users use it a lot just for like generic planning exercises. It's really good to get kind of a massing of the site.
Yeah, so I'll just click on grocery site. It's one of our defaults. It's really just going to be a box that we have, which we can drag and move around with the site itself. And this can be any shape that we want. So if I wanted to go in and add a couple points to here to, follow whatever the design intent that we have for this, you can see you can go in and maneuver that, and you're getting those kind of updates down on the bottom. With the parking that we have over here, there's options also to go in. We can select that parking area. And let me kind of make this just a bit bigger for us. There we go. We can go in, select the parking area and change the orientation if we need to kind of see if there's different yields or if you needed to follow a certain direction. Oh, tabulations. And we can see kind of the output of that one as well.
Nice.
For parking in relation to, let's say like a Texas wrap style building, this parking is going to be based off of the demand that we have. So if I were to increase our parking demand, let's say I want a 2.0 parking ratio, that garage itself is going to grow to meet that demand. So not only is it a surface parking one, the garage will dynamically update to there. And then since we're on a garage anyway, we can left click on this kind of circular button here. This moves our ramp if needed. So we can start to move that parking ramp or change the slope of that ramp underneath our garage tab if needed, depending on how you wanted to park that garage.
I know we're running out of time soon, but there's a subdivision question in here that I think touches on a few things. Is 125 acres the max? We have some 300 acre sites. So it depends on what the parcels look like. Generally, we can get 125 acres. But you can also use roads and just split sites to get up to 120 or 300 acres. We are also looking for industrial and subdivision and townhomes to up our limit of to increase our site sizes and number of elements in there and so on and so forth. That's kind of a pretty big technical carry for us. So it's a bit of work, but with these larger subdivision and industrial sites, we would love to just be able to draw one big site box and solve it. So yeah, that's coming up at some point. Civil 3D export. So we don't have a Civil 3D specific export, but we export to DXF. So I believe you can import that just fine.
All right. I think we are running out of time here. So let's go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you guys for joining. Really appreciate you attending our webinar and seeing all we've been up to. Hope you're excited about the things that we're working on and the things that we're going to be rolling out. Right here, we have a QR code to sign up for a trial. The URL is also at the bottom, but that QR code will take you right there. Sign up for trial. We can get you in there for free, give you a few weeks to test it out for you and your team. But I think that's all for today. Thanks again for joining and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.